We're back. It's 12 months later and I am thrilled to introduce our virtual announcement of the PEFC Photographer of the Year award. This year, our members once again called on photographers, amateur and professional, to enter their amazing forest photos, and they really delivered. Our members then had the tricky task of choosing their national winners, many of which you could see here on our Facebook page. At PEFC International, we then had the pleasure of choosing from the best of these photos for our PEFC Photographer of the Year Award 2021. Today, we are proud to reveal our winners and show you their amazing photos. Ben, our CEO, and Lucas, an experienced photography enthusiast, will take us through the 11 finalists, highlighting their forestry and their photographic merits, before going on to announce our overall winner. We'll then hear from Victor, a self-taught photographer, who will explain why we chose this photo as our winner. But before we get started, for many of you, this could be the first time you hear about PEFC. So who are we? At PEFC, we work for the sustainable management of the world's forests, and we do this through forest certification. Forest certification is a set of requirements and criteria that a forest owner needs to meet. Now that might sound complex, but it isn't. And what's best is that it enables you to make a difference. Next time you go shopping, look for the PEFC label. You can find it on a range of different products, from furniture to paper and so much more. The PEFC label means that the wood in that product comes from a sustainably managed forest. By choosing a PEFC certified product, you are helping to make a difference in protecting the world's forests. And our forests are truly remarkable. They provide food and livelihoods for millions of people around the world, and they are home to an extraordinary amount of biodiversity. They help maintain water quality and they help stabilise soils. And they are helping us to mitigate against climate change, an issue that has never been as important as it is now. But our forests need to be managed sustainably, and that is where our work at PEFC comes in. But enough of the business talk. It's time to get down to why we're really here today, and that's to announce our winning photos. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Ben, who has the enviable task of announcing our winners. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Hannah, and I'm delighted to be here again today and to reveal the 11 finalists of this year's photo contest before the big announcement, the winner of the PEFC Photographer of the Year 2021 award. And I'm joined again today by Lucas, and together we're going to talk about what makes these 12 photos so special and why they were chosen. Lucas, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back, Ben. It's a pleasure to be able to comment and talk about these wonderful pictures for another year.
Okay, so well, why don't we get started on the first photo? This first photo is called Mirror Image of Beast, and the photographer is Timo Sundgren. It was taken in Finland. Fantastic photo of a wolf and a bear. Bear's obviously got something the wolf wants. Not something you ever see really in nature, and the photographer must have been really lucky to get this, but a peaceful scene and you're just sort of wanting to know if something's going to happen now. Why is this photo so special, Lucas?
For me, this picture really embodies everything that wildlife photography is about. It's about patience and beauty and nature. And what the photographer's been able to achieve is cool lighting, a sharp scene, and a sharp image going the whole way through, even in pretty technically complex conditions. And on top of that, the photographer's brought in strong symmetry. There's a beautiful mirror effect on the water, leading lines with the trees, bringing the viewer's eye into the two animals. It just makes for a beautiful shot.
I love the way you describe these things, Lucas. I just see a beautiful picture and try to think of it from a forestry point of view. But thank you for explaining that. That actually also explains a little bit about why this is such a special photo. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. This one is actually a photo which is called The Carpet of Moss. It's by a photographer called Radenko Malik. It was taken in Slovenia. And it's basically the moss which covers a tree that's obviously fallen down in a forest, illuminated by sun. Really fantastic set of colors. I love the way that you have this sort of dark forest but lit up by this luminous green. Really exciting thing when you see it in real life. Lucas, over to you. What makes this so special?
What makes it special is that the photographers managed to produce, again, a beautifully crisp picture. And the warm lighting, the leading line of the log sort of draws you into the picture, draws you into the forests. And it really does reflect the path to new adventures. And it's a leading line that could also be compared to life. It draws you in. It takes you on a journey. It's a fabulous setup. When you look at it first, it takes a couple of looks to really get into it. But the more you look at it, the more you realize how brilliant it is, just through its simplicity and its colors and its textures.
Yes, and it's interesting how the photographer called it the path to new adventures. You can definitely see, you want to follow it along and see what's happening over there, what's going on behind this wonderful scene as well, as the light leads you that way. Fantastic photo.
Draws you
really
in.
Exciting. So let's have a look at the next one. This is called, and we've got actually a couple of sunrises, but this is a beautiful sunrise at Semenye Dam. The photographer is Tan E Long. It's taken in Malaysia. This is a dam which provides water for the population in the valley below, and it's been doing so since the 1980s, so presumably there's a path all the way around it. I think this is one of those sort of photographs where, you know, as a forester, especially at sunrise, one of the best things about sunrise photos is that it's not dark when you want to go home. You can watch the sunrise. But it's a beautiful photo with a fantastic reflection, really calm. You know, it's something that you see and it just makes you feel just absolutely calm. And the symmetry is just absolutely amazing. Just as a layman, if I was a forester seeing this, I'd also want to take lots of snaps of this. So Lucas, tell us a bit more about this photo.
But the symmetry brings its own framing as well, because the eye is drawn in both by the line in the middle and the framing of the trees, which just sort of drags you into the water towards the mountains in the background with the beautiful soothing colors. I was just looking at my notes a couple of seconds ago, and I saw that I'd written down the first time I looked at it. It just made me sort of sit back and breathe, and just it brings tranquility, which is lovely from a picture.
And it's also amazing because of the kind of it's got a dark frame around it, but yet you can really sense the sunrise coming out of that. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought, well, it's a bit dark, but actually it isn't at all. It's a really, it's got lots of light coming into it, and so it's quite exciting that way.
Well, the photographers used the dark foreground to frame the incoming light, which just draws your eye to it. And then when your eye is drawn to the light, it's also drawn to the colors. And as I said, it just makes for a beautifully tranquil scene.
I mean, it's one of those...
And a brilliant picture.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose as a water supply, hopefully there's a nice walkway around about it, and so people can enjoy that more often, not just in the photograph, but actually in real life as well. So let's go and look at the next photograph. This one is called Misty Sunrise. The photographer is Jari Rompainen, and he's from Finland. And what we see here in this incredibly, first initially from my impression, it's a yellow photograph, fantastic sunrise again. It's a picture of the photographer's friend sitting in a kayak, fantastic thing to be doing in a very, very slow-moving water. Really, I love to watch the mist going up and everything else. It's a really exciting and inspiring photo. So tell me a bit more about the techniques of this one. What makes it so special?
I think what's really made it special here is the air of mystery that's been brought by the fog and the wonderfully warm light streaming through the fog, the backlighting which silhouettes the canoeist. You can see there's not a lot of detail on the canoe, but you can still see what it is. So it just sort of drags you in, and you can imagine yourself looking at it or being there and imagining this person paddling past you. And what struck me the first time I looked at this picture was that you're sort of drawn in from all sides, because you're drawn in by the rays of light, you're drawn in by the ripples of water in the foreground, which really leads you to the canoeist, so the subject of the picture. It's a fabulous piece of work as well.
I always love photographs of sunrise, especially over water, because it has a kind of a nearly kind of a honey type feel about it. I mean, I know there's a bit more rapidly moving fluid light at the beginning here, but a very warm picture, I felt.
It really is. The photographers obviously capitalized in the golden hour, which is the hour just after the sun rises, to catch those really soft tones, those warm tones of light bouncing off the atmosphere before the sun's really angled in and is hitting the earth harshly. It's
lovely photograph. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This is one which is called the Magic Portal. The photographer is Angel Morales. It's taken in Spain, obviously looking out from underneath a rocky outcrop, over fields, and then as well, foreground, and then forests, and then mountains. A fantastic sky in the background. It's just one of those photographs where, you know, as a layman, I look at it and I go, wow, that's just beautiful. But go and explain why it's so beautiful, please.
But I assure you, even as an experienced photographer, it's still a beautiful picture. Because not only is, again, we're coming back to framing, it seems to be a lot of framing in this year's in this year's photo contest, but just draws you in and draws you in and draws you in. And not only that, but in this picture, the photographers used a fairly large depth of field, which means a good proportion of the picture is in focus. So not only is the foreground with the sort of ledge, which draws you into the first bit of the picture in focus, but then as you move further into the picture, the ridges are still in focus. And that just leads to a picture that, I'm using these words a lot, but just drags you in and makes you want to be there, and you can imagine yourself there.
Yeah,
and as well, the light sort of coming in from the sides, makes for beautiful illumination of the work.
I see what you mean about you actually want to be in practically every part of that. I'd love to be in those mountains. I'd love to be in that forest, or even just in the foreground. So it's just wonderful. It's a really, as you say, it draws you in. It really draws you in.
It makes you want to go there and just walk.
Absolutely.
Walk over, keep walking. And that's what you want from a picture, to travel.
So let's then go on to the next one. Now, we've had some photographs over the years which include being taken from a drone. I have to say this is an amazing photo. This is called the bird's eye view of the wetland forests of Tasik Bera. The photographer is Yusuf Madi. It's taken in Malaysia, and when you actually look very closely at it, you can see that the photographer is actually sitting in the boat in the center of the photo, flying a drone. Apparently he was geo-mapping the area for his work, and he just saw how beautiful it was from above, so he decided to take some photographs of that. I mean, what a wonderful way to actually get some real benefits out of doing a job, getting such beautiful views and seeing that. That's a nice view to get at your work, especially if you're at the bottom there driving through and you're doing this mapping, you know, from above. Lovely photograph. It just draws the eyes in. But tell us a bit more about the structure of this photograph here.
I mean, it's definitely not a view that we get at our day-to-day offices, that's for sure. I don't see that looking out of my desk, unfortunately. I mean, I'm a fan of a drone shot. I love a drone shot. I can't get enough of drone shots. And the one thing that drone shots often allow you to bring in is a different perspective. And as we've seen before, and what's really pulled up in this picture is the harmony between man and nature. There are a lot of technical rules of composition which have been used. Could it be the rules of thirds, the leading lines of the water, the break in the patterns of the green trees to highlight the subject of the boat and the movement. But it all pales into insignificance compared to just the majesty of the setting and everything else. It's Another fabulous picture. I think every year the PFC photo contest rolls around and we all use the word fabulous. That's what most of these pictures are. They really are.
We certainly do. When I looked at it, I was reminded at one time I was in Seoul in the big telecommunications tower, and if you look down, there's a viewing platform, and you can see, but it's sort of glass below your feet, and you look down on some trees which are underneath it. And I have to say, it does give me a sort of sense of vertigo. But this is amazing because, of course, it's got the water, it's got the sky reflected on the water. There's a boat, there's the movement of the waves, and it's just the kind of forest that most people wouldn't be able to get into without a boat. And just what a fantastic job this person must have, actually sort of mapping this kind of a forest and being able to see this from such a different perspective.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And that's what drone photography is all about. It's about new perspectives which you can't get to normally, which you really weren't able to get to without a helicopter 10, 15 years ago. And it's just opened up this whole new dimension, which is, again, fabulous.
Yep, absolutely agreed. So, well, let's have a look at the next photo. This is a photo called Hunting Prey in the Water. The photographer is Sofyan Effendi. He is from Indonesia, and the bird is Brahmini kite. And the fish actually is called a prey, but it's also called a forage fish. The photographer must have been really lucky getting this angle, getting this shot, angle and shot and so on. You're sort of looking at it thinking, oh gosh, I hope that kite's not coming from me. But it's an absolutely beautiful curves and shapes and just nature in action, which if you're out and about in forests, sometimes you're very privileged to see it, but it's rare. And this is just an amazing capturing of a moment. So tell me a bit more what you think about this photo, Lucas.
I mean, pictures like this never get old, unlike that fish who's having a bad day, must be said. What really struck me with the picture was it's beautifully sharp. The solid, the subject jumps out of a solid background, which is slightly out of focus because the depth of field has just been spot on for the picture. And I looked actually to the technical details, the EXIF on this picture, and it was taken with a long lens. So to be able to get this long focal length, the lightning sharp and precise and speedy shutter release, just capture this moment in time of the bird who's going to have his dinner, the fish. Well, there you go. It's just the embodiment of good or pretty close to perfect wildlife photography for me.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful. As you say, it's not going to get. It's a very timeless photograph, and it'll go on. You can look at that for years to come. It's a beautiful photograph. And
the way the details have been captured, the droplets of water are coming off the fish and the bird. It's technical precision to an absolute high. Well done.
Lovely, absolutely lovely photograph. So we're moving from one wildlife photograph to another one. This next one is called Fallow Deer Stag. Now, when I first looked at that one, I thought, what a serene, quiet photo. It sort of really made me feel a little bit of some kind of painting of a fallow deer. This is taken by Andrei Lazar from Romania. But he tells us that basically this was a stag who was running around in circles with a doe. And it noticed the photographer, looked at him for a few minutes, and the photographer got this fantastic photograph. And then the fallow deer continued to run around in circles, obviously had more important things to do than to worry about a photographer taking a photograph. But from something that you learn about as being actually a very action-packed moment, to have this really serene, quiet moment is pretty inspiring. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful photo. Now, tell me. I mean, I've said that a lot about photos, but tell us a little bit more about this photo, Lucas.
What struck me with this picture was the way that sort of the shadows and the fog and the mist there is in the background, coupled with a lightning sharp shutter speed, allowed for a brilliantly clear and defined picture. Because if you have the high res version at your disposal, you can actually see the hairs on the stag's neck.
Oh wow!
And
right.
on top of that, everything is just rounded off from a composition point of view by just a little touch of cat's eye, so the light in the stag's eyes, which just immediately focuses the viewer's eye into the center of the picture, onto the subject, and leaves absolutely no doubt as to what's happening and the majesty and the power of the moment. I mean, it's quite a look the stag's got. It's just staring you down. I'm not sure how comfortable I would have felt in that situation, but
and the photographer was probably being eyed up to see whether he was a threat or not, and whether he would be charged or not. But it looks really serene. It's a very, very, I think he said quiet, calm moment. But actually, it's probably actually quite a fight or flight situation. With the setup. I mean, absolutely amazing how he was there to capture that. I've seen a few deer in my day looking and seeing it, but usually they quickly disappear, and you wouldn't have much time to get this photo. So he must have really had it set up and got it at exactly the right moment.
That's the sign of a good photographer: right time, right place, lots of dedication and hard work, and also being able to, when the time comes, execute the picture correctly, which is what's happened here.
Yeah, lovely.
I wish I had a picture like that in my gallery. That would be in my portfolio. That'd be lovely.
Oh, you have to keep getting out of it at those times when those deers are doing their rutting. That's when you have to get out.
Indeed, yeah.
But it's quite dangerous as well. Okay, let's go on to the next photograph. This is called Autumn at Federa Lake. It's by Sonia Fantini. And some of you may know that Sonia Fantini was the winner of our 2019 photo contest. And this is taken in Italy, and it's taken in a UNESCO World Heritage Site at Lake Federa in Cortina d'Ampezzo in the Ampezzo Dolomites. An absolutely stunning photo from a forester's point of view, because I immediately think of technical issues such as watching the trees gradually migrate up the hillside, the smaller trees, and you can see that they're probably very much at the limit of where they grow through natural regeneration in their own way with the natural open spaces and so on. And then, of course, you've got that beautiful lake at the front of this scene, which just reflects everything again, including the mountain just behind it, and again, beautiful autumn colors. I could just look at this photo for ages and ages and ages, but tell us a bit more of what you see as a photographer, Lucas.
What strikes me about this picture is, I mean, the symmetry is wonderful and the colors are amazing. And on top of that, the photographer's used a high depth of field, so there's detail the whole way down the focal length. So what's in the foreground is in focus, what's in the background is in focus. Which brings more and more details to the picture, or to your eye every time you look at it. It took me a couple of views at the beginning to sort of get into this picture, but every time I looked at it, I found another detail: the little house, the track coming in, the signpost, and again, that's immersive and it brings you in, and that's really what I would look for in a picture.
Yeah, absolutely a lovely photo. Now let's go to a winter photo. This is a photo called In the Capercailles Forest. The photographer is called Maciej Ferencik, and it was taken in Slovakia. Now, this is one of my favorite bird species. It's the capercaillie. It's quite a heavy bird, actually. Usually they're about 4 kilograms in weight. The males tend to be twice as heavy as the females. But one of the interesting thing about this bird here is it's non-migratory, so it tends to hang around the same kind of forests all year round. The name capercaillie comes from the old Scots Gaelic, capelcolchi, which means horse of the wood. So it's a wonderful bird, but what fascinated me about this one is that usually you see capercaillie on the ground. And this photo actually inspired me to have a little look again at this bird species. And it's actually the females that tend to spend in the wintertime most of the time in the trees. So I haven't been able to, I looking at the photographs, just seeing the two capercaillie in there, and then seeing a whole group of other birds flying around. So there's a lot of movement, even though there's a lot of stillness in it as well at the same time. So it's a pretty amazing photograph. Tell us a bit more about the aspects that make this such a special photograph, Lucas.
Yes. For me, what brought the picture to my attention was the fact there are multiple levels, as you said. There's the capercaillie sitting on its tree. The second one sitting on another tree. Then there are the birds in the background moving. There's also in the foreground there's a slightly blurred or out of focus tree, which sort of brings the picture together. And again, talking about being pulled into a picture, it's all this, the framing and the levels just sort of drag you in more and more and more.
Yeah.
The other thing I was actually thinking of looking at it was, okay, I've actually got a capercaillie in a tree at eye level.
Yes.
Where was the photographer when he took the picture? Was he also up a tree, followed swiftly by, it looks cold there. I mean,
very cold.
Very cold. And it's all these elements coming together that just make it impactful. And also the slight lack of color, because I mean, it's a winter landscape, just makes it all a little bit more mysterious. And another excellent picture. Really fabulous.
It's so good to see that there's even two of them, capturing them both together. They tend to sort of group together sometimes in the winter for feeding. It's a bird that's it's on the IUCN list, but it's at least at risk. And I remember when I was a forester in Scotland, one of the biggest problems that we had was that capercaillies would be flying into deer fences, and that's one of the biggest reasons for why they were killed. So we had to sort of look at fencing policies and see whether we could change it, find other ways to keep their predators under control, because they do, get predated on by red foxes or lynxes and so on. So sitting up there calmly is not just to get a good view; it's actually also to stay safe. So an amazing bird, really one of the most majestic birds in the forest. A nice that they called it the capercaillie's forest. Very nice photo. Yeah. Okay. So moving from one winter scene, let's move on to another winter scene. This is one that's called "Quiet is the Wilderness." Absolutely amazing skies and trees. Sort of, I nearly said in sugar coated in snow. The photographer is Petteri Karttunen, and it's taken in Finland in the Risitunturi National Park. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but absolutely amazing, just with the light of the lantern that's being held up, but also at the same time just the millions of stars up there sort of casting light as well. I just really, it reminds me nearly of a fairy tale. It's a really sort of childhood, you're expecting Santa Claus to arrive or something like that, in Finland. But it's a beautiful photograph, these individual trees. The only other place that you might see something like that would be if you're skiing and you go and see the trees high up in the alpine areas. But this is just amazing to see nature and the vastness of the universe behind it, and a person obviously either looking at the star or the tree. I think probably looking at the stars. But tell me more about this photograph.
I mean, the first thing that struck me about this photograph was that it's in the portrait format, so it's vertical, and I was 100% convinced. But the more you look at it, the more you realize just how perfect it is, because the two trees frame the person standing there, and then you also get this enormous expanse of night sky, which has just been captured perfectly, because technically this is very, very low light photography, and getting a shot that's that crisp, that clean is almost impossible. I mean, obviously not impossible, but pretty close. And the photographers used a very long exposure, I mean, a reasonably long exposure of about 5 seconds, along with a shallow depth of field to allow enough light to enter the camera. But with this long exposure as well, what happens is that you can get blurring. So his model has had to, the subject has had to stand there for 5 seconds, not moving in the slightest, which they've really very well achieved. And then that with the
especially that cold.
especially that cold. It looks cold. I think we're getting towards the winter months of the competition, the calendar that will ensue. But what really struck me as well was that the framing of the trees and bringing out the subject, but then also leading the eye into the sky, which has been captured wonderfully, because it's what often happens with long exposure photography when it comes to night skies is that you get star trailing. So you get the movement of the stars, which hasn't happened here. You've got a very slight bit of movement because the focal length is, and the aperture, the timing, and everything else are just perfect. But then when you really go delving further into the picture, you realize that all the stars are nice and perfect and crisp, except a shooting star, which they've caught at the same time. So it's the details, the details of this picture really bring it out to me. And I mean, yeah, another amazing picture.
Henry obviously understands his light and timings and making sure that all
his technical settings, indeed, yes.
Really wonderful. Yeah, beautiful photograph. Absolutely. So now we've seen our 11 runners-up, and now it's time for the big announcement. And I'm delighted to reveal that Vitaly Popkov from the Ukraine is our winner of the PEFC Photographer of the Year 2021 award with his beautiful photo called The Man and the Forest. Here we are with that beautiful photograph. I have to say, this is an amazing, timeless photograph. As a forester, I remember watching exhibition harvesting, people bringing out logs with a horse, something that's becoming much, much more common for small forest owners, because actually bringing in large machinery into a small 2-hectare forest is just not economic. So there are quite a few people who have set up and brought back the whole tradition of doing a small-scale harvesting in small family forest-owned forests. And this is a photo which just makes me think of timelessness. I remember once getting a book from a forester, a retired forester from the 1950s, with photographs from earlier showing harvesting by horse was something that disappeared for quite a while. And, being black and white, it sort of really reminded me of this, but it's an amazing photograph taken in winter time.
It's a fabulous and dramatic picture. It's a use of black and white, which I find admirable, because it removes distraction from anything except the subject. The white background created by the snow just brings the man, his horse, and the log out towards the viewer. And I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different rules of composition that have been used in this picture, but they just stack up, be it the framing, the leading lines, the breaking of patterns, everything just brings the picture out and is absolutely wonderful.
Well, Lucas, thank you once again for making these photos come alive and explaining why they're so special. And now it's time for me to hand over to Victor, a professional photographer, to explain why the jury chose Vitaly's photo as our winner.
Thank you, Ben. I'm thrilled to share with you the reasons that made this photo the winner of the PEFC International Photographer of the Year 2021. I'll give you a quick description of the picture and the points that made the difference. But first, I want to congratulate all the participants. Each year, we are amazed by the creativity and all the stunning photos taken all over the world. As a portrait photographer, it is inspiring to see how people can share feelings, stories, even the beauty of the forests. So thumbs up everyone. Now back to the winning photo. It was taken in Ukraine, in the Carpathians. No need to say, winter is there. We can see a man and his horse carrying what seems to be some wood logs in the snow. The work seems as tough as the weather. The man's look is focused on his horse. He seems ready to react and help his teammate at any moment. I like the idea of collaboration between human and animal. And here we can feel some kindness in the man's attitude. The composition of the image gives us some closeness with the scene and keeps us out of it at the same time. Looks like street photography, but hey, we're in the woods. That's pretty cool. Regarding the development, the grain or noise in the image, this black and white rendered image, increases the timeless feeling and adds a touch of roughness. Last but not least, we all love this picture at first sight. Now I'm delighted to hand over to Vitaly Popkov, the PEFC International Photographer of the Year 2021. Thank you.
Привіт, я Віталій. Маю честь презентувати свою світлину, яка стала переможцем фотоконкурсу. Ця робота була відзнята в Івано-Франківській області під час моєї зимової подорожі по Карпатах.
Для мене ця світлина цікава тим, що вона як вікно в порталі часу. Дивлячись на неї, занурюєшся десь середину ХХ століття як мінімум. Взагалі, ліси мають потужний, я б навіть сказав, якийсь магічний вплив на мене і мою творчість. Подивіться, хіба це не вражає, не захоплює? Я підтримую національні системи лісової добровільної сертифікації, бо ліс – це природне надбання людства, потребує дбайливого, відповідального відношення.
Дякую за увагу. З вами був Віталій. Любіть і бережіть ліс.
A huge congratulations to Vitaly Popkov for being our PFC Photographer of the Year 2021. We'd like to thank all the photographers that entered their photos this year. We received so many amazing photos, it was really hard to choose just 12. We'd also like to thank our jury members, as well as all the national jury members, for providing their time and their expertise. We couldn't have done it without you. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. We hope you love the photos as much as we do. And if you want to see any of them again, simply follow this link on the screen. And watch out next year, the PFC photo contest will be back in 2022. Goodbye from the PFC International team.